Welcome to Reminiscing, our Highline History, a radio show presenting the memories of our community in the Highline area at 106.5 LP FM, South King County. Listen to a new episode every week with your host, Roger Price. Ready for more stories?
Hi, I'm Roger Price, and I'm a volunteer here at the Highline Heritage Museum. Today I have an old classmate of mine from Sylvester and Highline. We went to school together for quite a few years, but it's Chris Hansen has been a resident of Five Corners area all through school. So, and his father had the Flying A station right at Five Corners and then it turned into Phillips 66, and it was quite a different businesses, but he's always had it for a long time. So I'm going to let Chris take over from here, and he'll tell us about his growing up in Burien.
Hello, I'm Chris Hansen, and I have lived in Burien, Normandy Park area my entire life, other than going away for a few years for school and other things. Growing up in the 50s and 60s, Burien was a great time to grow up. Had lots of fun and very few restrictions. What I thought I'd start out, though, is be talking about Five Corners. I'm not sure why it's called Five Corners, because there are six corners. That's the intersection of 160th and First Avenue and Ambom. And my father had a gas station. Grandpa put the gas station there in 1941 and built a building, and then Dad took it over in 1946 after World War II, and he had it until 1979. Started out as a regular old Flying A associated gas station, and then, as Roger mentioned, it changed to Phillips 66. And then for some reason, the federal government kicked Phillips 66 off the West Coast. So Dad had to go independent, and therefore was called Ariel's. And Dad's gas station sat on the corner between First Avenue and Ambom, small corner. Right behind it was Burien Hardware that was there for a long time. And then across the street from that, the corner that's made by Ambom and 160th, there was actually a little grocery store there. I remember it having a lot of, selling a lot of fruit, had fruit stands and vegetable stands out in front of the store. And just north of that, a little ways, just, the next building up was a small little building that had a dry cleaners in it. And the man that owned it, first name was Zito, and he actually cleaned all of the uniforms for the Seattle Totems hockey team. So it's kind of neat having him there. He got me interested in hockey, and I played hockey at Burien Ice Arena, the Cap Pryor, the owner there. And then I started playing down in Seattle at the old ice arena down on Mercer Street. But then across 160th from that was, I think it was Burien Lumber. It was a lumber store, lumber, and it eventually was bought out by Her.
Oh, yes.
It became Her Lumber. And then across the street from that, between First Avenue and Ambom again, but on the south side of the corner, there was a little real estate office. And if I recall, the owner was a Joe Owens. That there. And then when you crossed Ambom, and so the piece between Ambom and 160th, and kind of the southeast corners, was Paul Savage had a truck and auto repair shop there for years and years. And he actually, when he sold, he actually moved down to Westport, and he would build a fishing boat every winter. And then he'd sell the one he had the last year. So he made money fishing and doing that. And then on that corner, after the Savages left, they built a standard oil gas station, kind of like Chevron. I think they broke, did they break, Rockefeller up between
I believe
Chevron
so.
and Standard or whatever. So there was a gas station there, and then it left, and you got B&R today, or you had Baskin and Robbins on that corner. And then if you go north again across the 160th to the corner where the 76 gas station is, there was a little, I guess you call it a strip mall today, but a little building there that had a grocery store in it, had a barber shop, and had a shoe repair shop. And maybe even Dr. Gunsel was there before he moved up the street. Roger was thinking that Dr. Gunsel was there.
I believe he was for a short time, seems like, but
yeah. And then behind or east of that little store was or set of stores was Balzerini's nursery was back in that area. And then,
oh yes, I remember there.
Yeah, and then Balzerini's developed that property and ended up moving the nursery to a couple different locations on that big piece of property as they brought Albertsons in. And there's a Black Angus.
Yes, the Black Angus.
In fact, where Albertson, or where PCC Market is today, was the Albertson store. And then right next to that, Balzerini's built a large building for their nursery. And then when they decided to move that building kind of where Arby's is, kind of in that side of the place, they moved the building and Black Angus put a restaurant in it. And Balzerini's had a little smaller nursery than at that time.
Yes, I remember that.
Is that memory?
And then also there was a Giant Tea. Remember that was in there for a while, and I believe Little John's Tavern was in one of those little nooks and corners for a while.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of a look at Five Corners. But growing up, when I was little, once you left that little set of buildings around the six corners of Five Corners, it was all trees in either direction. It was a little 2-lane road. There was when I was growing up, there was a blinker light first at Five Corners. And Dad, when he would leave the gas station, he made a 7th corner because he'd just go out the front of the gas station, in a big old truck with a big wood bumper. Nobody questioned it, kind of a thing. So he turned that in. But but I went to, so that's kind of a little bit about Five Corners and how it's developed and changed over the years. But that's kind of how I remember it starting in the 50s.
Right. Yeah. I read an article in the Highline Times here about a couple of years ago, but back around 1930, First Avenue only went to 160th. It didn't go past 160th on out towards Manhattan at that time. And there was a farmer that had a piece of property kind of in the gully just to the south of Five Corners. And his daughter used to he built a little slide for his daughter to slide down the side of a hill, and it went down towards Miller Creek, and he put a dam up on the Miller Creek there so his daughter could slide right into a pool of water.
Yeah.
And this was 1930. It was pretty interesting stuff. And there was actually, I think you lived out, there was a dairy out towards your place too at one time.
Yeah.
So.
And they, of course, growing up, we had Mr. Mahoney was the egg man, and he had a little van that he would go around and sell eggs to everybody. And his chicken coops were out about 192nd and First Avenue on the west side of First Avenue, just before you started down the hill to 200. And he would bring around fresh eggs. We'd buy them, and then we had the bread truck. Can't remember the guy that had the little van that brought bread and donuts and
Pastries.
pastries.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he'd come around, and then of course there was the milkman that
Oh,
would bring
yeah.
milk, and they would bring milk in bottles, and so you had, and that was when they had real milk.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you always had cream at the solid cream at the top, and the uh, little paper tab that you'd pull
Right.
off,
Uh-huh.
to get to the milk. So that was that. But Roger was talking about Miller Creek, and I lived kind of up the hill from Miller Creek.
You lived in that little turnaround in there about 164th and 166th.
Sixth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a horseshoe in there. And there's quite a few homes in there and back in those days, it was you were right there. The creek was just across the street practically from you. So there was a lot of adventures there.
Yeah, we used to go from basically First Avenue and would walk down Miller Creek to the Cove. And then that stopped when they put the sewer district in down there.
That ruined it. Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't go follow Miller Creek down. But what was nice back then was all the families that lived on Miller Creek, on our side of Miller Creek, had kids.
Mhm.
So you could go down and play all day and nobody ever called the police,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And but like that back in the 30s, we would build a dam every once in a while to create a swimming hole.
Okay.
And then being really dumb, we would some of us used to go down in the creek, down to the creek in a heavy coat, no glasses, no head protection, and have BB gun fights.
Oh,
It was like playing army.
okay. Yeah.
We go down and shoot at each other.
And once in a while, a stray one would hit you. Yeah.
So we had to be careful. But then we'd play capture the flag across the creek. One team would have a flag on the Sylvester side, and one team would have a flag on our side, and we would play capture the flag down there. And then from Mr. Mahoney and his eggs, one of the guys that lived in the neighborhood worked for him after school, looking for bloodshot eggs. And Mark McCoy, who was the guy that had the job, would bring the bad eggs home, and we'd all grab a bag of bad eggs and go down and hide and throw rotten eggs at each other. So
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting in mischief. But
Yeah.
yeah, you had, I think the Mark Pearson family lived in there.
Yeah.
Peggy Cobella's family lived in that little area. I think was Beffa had a place in there, I think.
Yeah.
So
And
that,
he's a dentist now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's retired dentist, and his son's taking over. Yeah,
right.
they were in
Okay.
there. Yep.
Yeah, I still go to the Tom and his son now. I go to his son now. So
Is that
that's
Kyle?
yeah, Kyle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun area. And there was actually you could if you could take the shortcut, you could go right to Sylvester from practically your back porch, but it would have to traverse through a lot of overgrown shrubs and different things. So it'd be a little harder.
And there was a half a tree down there. It was called the Bouncing Bridge, and we could bounce on it, and we'd have to go across that to get up to Sylvester.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Now
And Balzerini's just lived not too far from you either, just up to the north and west a little bit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And but I went to Sunnydale as a for grade school, and I don't remember how I got there from like grades one, kindergarten to second or third. Maybe my folks drove us, I'm not sure, but we would catch when I remember catching the bus, it was at 168th and First Avenue on the west side.
Okay.
On the west side, where that retirement center is now.
Okay. Mhm.
We'd catch the bus there, and it would come to there, and then we would wander up to 12th, 14th, and 16th, running right along the original single runway at SeaTac.
Okay.
And so we would actually, there was tons of houses up there.
Yeah, there
And
was
a lot of
back in the day.
A lot of kids coming to Sunnydale. And so it's kind of neat to remember back where the D'Ambrosios were truck farmers, and up on 16th, on the west side of 16th, they had a big truck farm
Oh,
where they
okay.
grew vegetables and things and would take them to market.
I think Ginzal's also had a place in Sunnydale.
Yep,
So there's a lot of truck farming back then.
yep.
They're all along there.
And then down at 152nd in Des Moines, the Vaca farm was there,
Yes.
and it became the pumpkin patch.
Angelo and Tony, I believe, the brothers had their farm in there for forever, it seemed like. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good soil. That's what made it so great. It was such good soil in there.
yep.
But
Now, if we talk a little bit about back in the day, there were two movie theaters in Burien.
Mhm.
There was one basically across the street from the Highline Museum here at 152nd and Ambaum.
Mhm.
It was an old movie theater, and I remember going there to see The Monster of the Black Lagoon. Scared the crud out of me as a little kid. And then they ended up moving it to where Bison Pizza is or
Right, yeah.
was.
It was called Den Burien that when the one you went to first,
Yeah,
and then they moved to the new modern theater. Yeah.
yeah. And then up at about 136th and First Avenue, just a little north of them, a little north of the corner there, on the east side of the road, was a theater made out of a Quonset hut. It was a big, like a army Quonset hut,
Uh-huh.
and we would go there to watch 3D movies.
Okay. Yeah, that was Coy's.
Is that what it was? I
Uh-huh.
don't remember. But
Yeah.
you put on the little
Oh, you did.
cardboard glasses with special lenses so you
Oh,
could see the
that's
3D
cool.
movies.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I
So
think they also, I don't remember, but they also had a koi fish pond, I believe, inside of there that
Yeah.
I've forgotten about. I never don't remember it, but I've read stories. So that's very cool.
so we did have a couple movie theaters right here in Burien.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And then as you move east from the corner of 152nd and Ambaum, where the movie theater was, you headed east along First Avenue, and we had a clothing store called Bells of Burien, which is just a little west of where the current library and city hall is, kind of as they started up that hill,
Mm-hmm.
that little rise there. You had Bells of Burien, and then it became Lamont's.
Right.
And,
And eventually it was Gottschalk's at the very end. Yeah.
yeah. So we had Bells of Burien was a really nice store. We didn't need to.
Yes, it sure was. And everybody really misses Bell's and Lamont's.
Yeah. And then if you go a little further west, on the north side of 152nd was a play field there
Mhm.
around 152nd, 4th Southwest, kind of,
Right.
that was actually below the level of 152nd. You went down to the football field and the baseball fields.
Uh-huh.
And there was an old log cabin that was sort of the field house
Right,
that was
right.
there, that was kind of on the north side of the property. And I played Pee Wee football there.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I've done a few different stories about the old field house. It was built back during I believe the CCCs or something like that in the early 40s. But yeah, there's basketball inside. Like you say, you played football, I played baseball there. And I believe in 1959 they got some land down by Highline High School, and then they made Mosier Field there, which is a nice complex for baseball and football and soccer. So
yeah,
it was pretty fun though at the time back in the later 50s when we were old enough to take advantage of it. Sure.
Yeah.
It was great.
And then just across 152nd from the little play field was where Windermere is now, basically. There was my dentist, Dr.
Oh,
Haltz.
okay. I had Dr. Halls also. Yeah.
And he had his dental office there, but at that time I didn't like the needle, so he actually did my cavities without any Novocaine.
Oh, man.
That was tough, and especially tough, I mean, maybe not, but it was the old belt drive
Oh.
drilling machine. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
yeah, it was the old belt drive, and after they put the silver in and you got all that mercury in your mouth, you were spitting it in a little bowl. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, yeah, it was, yeah, it wasn't the tastiest of stuff, that's for sure. No, oh, yeah, thinking of Dr. Hulse, yeah, I had him too, and he was in that, I think the same building as Dr. Morrison at the time. And my folks actually lived in a house directly behind there when I was, I think from the time I was one until I was about five. We lived right where Vince's restaurant is now. And that was some really good times. But we talk about that place some other time. But yeah. So anyway, Chris, go ahead. Go ahead into where were you left off there at the
And then just next to Dr. Haltz's office was a Dairy Queen.
uh-huh.
And if I did, he always gave us a little coupon to go get an ice cream cone after we had been drilled on. So that was
That was your incentive for with taking all the pain.
yeah. And then, of course, as you go further east, another famous place in Burien at the corner of First Avenue and 152nd, where Taco Bell is or whatever.
Uh-huh.
There was the famous Dick's Drive-In.
Lou's Drive-In.
Or was it Lou's?
Yeah, it was Lou's.
Oh, okay. Lou's Drive-In.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where all the kids hung out.
Yeah, they sure did.
With their fancy cars and all of that kind of stuff. And
Hot rods and
Yes.
yeah, it was the place to hang out back in the late 50s, early 60s.
yeah,
You'd always find kids there at night hanging around. And he also had a place in White Center.
yes, yeah. So you had the good old Lou's Drive-In, that's right. And then, of course, you go a little further east and you get to Highline High
Yeah.
School. And of course, we went to Highline High School in the day when it was the old building, but it was still in good shape.
It was.
I thought it was in good shape. We ate down, the lunchroom was down in the basement, wasn't it?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And
I think it was the first chance. I think that was where we got could get a milkshake. Couldn't we get a milkshake with part of your lunch? I think they had a milkshake machine, I believe.
yeah. And that was down near the boiler room, I think, too. So it was, we were a little underground there. But I don't know if we cared so much about the, what the building looked like. We were just going to school. We didn't need all the, and
No.
we didn't even have air conditioning.
No.
You had to open the window.
Yeah, they got plenty of windows back in those days.
Yeah.
They didn't paint over them or seal them up like nowadays. But yeah, no, Highline was a good place, and it was built around 25. So it was, wasn't quite 50 years old, but it still was good enough for us. So now they have a nice new building, but which was needed. So.
And then if you go a little further east, then you get to basically the intersection of 152nd and 8th Southwest. And then right there is also intersects with Des Moines.
Right. Uh-huh.
And there's a little triangle piece of property there, just set on the south side of 152nd, that there's a little grocery store there. We had grocery stores everywhere. I mean, just little ones.
They were, there were a lot more than there are now around here.
Yeah. And then north of that, up 8th Avenue, couple building sites, was a big wrecking yard.
Okay, sure. Now, yeah.
That I guess you'd say it was south of 518. So
it was just a little south of 518. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And a big wrecking yard. And they eventually got rid of the wrecking yard and put in Laurel Lake Apartments.
Mm-hmm.
But between the wrecking yard and the little grocery store, they put in a bowling alley. There was a bowling alley there.
Olympic Bowl, yes.
Yeah. And then they had, and I don't know if it was always a red apple or whether it
Well,
came in as something else,
it
but there
was
was a grocery store there.
several different Cushings. I think Ginzal's had a grocery there at one time in the early times. But yeah, Red Apple was there for a long, long time. And Associated Grocers was probably the main supplier over most of those years. But yeah.
And then if you kept on going, then you got to Vaca Farm again, which was on the east end of 152nd.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And they had the pumpkin patch there for years and years, and that ground was actually was lower than Des Moines Way. You would go down to get to the farm.
Into the fields.
Yeah. And just north of that on Ambom, which is now a big black parking lot for cars just before you get on 518.
Okay.
And that's where Laura Lake was. There was a little lake there that had a bunch of nice houses around it.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, had that there. And then just east of that, there were a lot of houses. I mean, when it was back a single runway, it was really there were just tons of houses, and the airplanes were all props.
Yeah, there weren't jets yet.
No, all props.
The whole hillside was full of houses on there. Yeah.
And
remember Nick Raffle Garbage was down in that right off of Des Moines. It's about where Burien keeps its maintenance trucks now, actually.
Yeah.
So Nick Raffle was there for a long time.
Yeah. And just going back to Five Corners for a minute, in the southeast corner, basically, there's some condominiums now, right when you come on, if you're heading south on 509 and you get off at 160th, there's those condominiums that are right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
That used to be a big nursery there. Ben Kodama had it.
Okay.
There's a bunch of greenhouses.
Yes.
Yeah, Ben Kodama had that for years.
That reminds me. Yeah, I'd like to invite Ben Kodama to do an interview sometime, because he's been a fixture in Burien for many, many years. Kodama, Caruso's, so it's many of those. And the Sakis had their nursery on Des Moines Way for so many years. So it's very good stuff.
Yeah, Sakis lived in by us. They're on that little U-shaped road.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh.
They lived, they had a piece of property on the creek.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Huh.
And, but yeah, that's, their nursery is where that used store place is now.
Yep.
Just north of 518.
And then they have the Japanese garden there at the SeaTac Community Center there on about 120, what is that, 136th and 20th or something like that.
Yeah. And then who was in our class that was on the sewer district for long? Tony Gonzalez.
Oh yeah.
Gonzalez was a big name out here too for the farming business.
They sure were. Yeah. He was I think his wife is still is on the commissioner of the sewer district.
Yeah.
But no, Tony was on there for a long time, and he had fruit stands, different areas. He had one over on Barton Street and 35th, and that I think he still his family still has that, I believe. Yeah. We lost him a few years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, he had the fruit stand there, and he sold Christmas trees.
He sure did.
Yeah.
He sold so many Christmas trees. It's amazing. It was successful.
Yeah. Going back to Five Corners for a second, after Dad had the gas station there for years, a guy from Vashon shows up with a big truck full of scraggly fir trees. And he says, Ariel, you want to sell some fir trees, some Christmas trees? And so Dad said, well, yeah, we'll try it. And so he started selling these crappy little fir trees, did that for a couple of years. And then we ended up going down to the Mount Hood National Forest area and bidding on a little bit of clearing.
Uh-huh.
And we'd take the truck and a big trailer down there and get nobles and pines and nice looking fir trees. And so we quit selling the scraggly ones.
Oh,
We could make a lot more money selling Christmas
yeah, and you
trees.
felt good about it too.
Yeah. And so for up through when he retired in 79, we were selling Christmas trees just there at the gas station.
Uh-huh.
And so he did that to supplement income. Our front yard was full of Christmas trees because we'd bring them home and put them there, and then you'd bring a handful, you'd bring a bunch down to the gas station because one year we get all the trees down there and Dad gets to work and he goes back and somebody had stolen all of the Christmas trees out of the middle of the lot.
Oh, no.
We had stands all the way around.
Oh, sure.
And so then the year after that, we put a trailer there and had somebody sleep overnight.
Oh.
And then to supplement income, second way, he had a rental yard
Oh, okay.
where, it was mainly yard equipment, mowers, tillers,
Oh, yeah.
the big, huge lawnmowers for cut and brush, or we had these things, they were called Mangs. They had a big Wisconsin engine on them and power wheels that people would rent to till up big chunks of ground with them.
Okay.
And but in that experience of working with the public and working with rental equipment, it became really clear that it was the user was most of the problem and not our equipment.
Yeah.
We had one guy come back, had rented a little Mary tiller, and at that time they didn't have recoiling starter cords. You had to wrap it around a little cup and start it. And this guy came back and that was ground down.
Oh.
And I asked him, he said, well, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear anything. Well, you had to have heard something. It was grinding this, some kind of rock or something was grinding the little cup down.
Oh, yeah.
So I had that.
Yeah.
But we had just, doctors. We had, of course, Dr. Gunsel was the general doctor. He was also the Highline doctor, football.
Yes, he was for many, many years.
And I understood that he had the idea that at least playing football, if the injury was more than a foot from your head, you could go back in because you weren't going to die.
Oh, yeah, that was back in the day. Sure.
And then up there by Dr. Holtz was Dr. Wallen. He was an eye doctor, optometrist, and was there. And then down near Five Corners, Dr. Arnott was a regular GP.
Okay.
Because when I was little, we had to go to downtown to visit a doctor.
Yeah.
We had to drive all the way into town to visit a doctor. We didn't have doctors out in Berry.
Not very many, no.
It was too far out in the woods.
And then the hospital really didn't get built until later around 1957, 58 and stuff in there. And it built in sections, so it's pretty large now, but back then it just started pretty small.
Just a little. Was it originally Highline Community Hospital?
Or yes, was that I think it was.
And then it became Berrien something or
I'm
whatever.
not sure. It's CHI now, I believe, or St. Anne's, I guess it's called now.
Yeah. But when we were little and over there at Sunnydale, I recall going to the little gym they had at the school, and we would line up and get vaccinations. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah, we would stand up and have to go through and get our shots for whatever they were given a shot.
Polio or whatever they could have been.
Yeah, back then. And we had in third grade, I had this teacher, Mrs. Hawsey, that was it was kind of fun. Every once in a while, she'd have to bring her little boy to school. And if we could get him to play with us, we didn't have to do any schoolwork.
Oh,
but she was quite the athlete. Now, granted, that gym was smaller than a full court, but we'd go down and she'd be sinking basketball hoops from center court.
Oh,
she was, and so she was pretty good at that. And then we had so I don't remember my first grade teacher, but second grade was Mrs. Krause. Third grade was Mrs. Hawsey. And then fourth grade was Mrs. Emerson. I thought of as Mrs. Krause was really young, or Mrs. Hawsey was really young, and then Mrs. Emerson was a bit older.
Oh, I see.
And she was really nice though. I really enjoyed her, and we had it had that ceiling, acoustical ceiling with the little holes. One time I shot a rubber band up and it stuck in one of the holes. And then after that, in the fifth grade, there was a Severinson. You maybe you didn't go to. Did you go to Sunnydale,
No,
or were you up at Lakeview?
I went to Lakeview.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Mr. Severinson, and then there was a Mrs. Johnson.
Oh,
So that was kind of the teachers
I
there.
did go to kindergarten at Sunnydale, and then my folks moved up closer to the hill, up towards, not in Gregory Heights, but up that way. So went to Gregory Heights for 2 years and then on to Lakeview.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good time.
Yeah, and so it was it was a great time to grow up in Burien. When First Avenue was a 2-lane road, when you left Five Corners and you head south, you go down in that dip.
Right.
Well, the Seattle Times had a paper shack there.
Oh, okay.
And every once in a while it'd end up down in Miller Creek. So some kids would push it push it off the edge.
Yeah.
Mark Pearson and I, just south of that, when you start up the hill, there's that blue house and that fourplex now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just before there was an open it was a field with tall grass and stuff, and we'd sit there and shoot cars with BB guns.
Oh,
but we always shot low. We just wanted to hit hubcaps.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
But I think that's pretty much it. I mean, Highline, Sylvester, was a fun place to be. And what was nice back then is if you didn't like somebody, you'd go to the Kiwanis property just behind Sylvester and have a fight. And depending on who's fighting was dependent on how many people went out back to watch.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah. That. And also, I remember we used to go up to where the property of the hospital is and go that direction too for fights, because there were woods up there too before the hospital was built.
Yeah.
So that was also a good spot for after school fights,
There was but we just did fists, and then the next day everybody was friends again.
Yeah.
There weren't any knives or guns like there are now. Nobody really got hurt.
No, that's true. That was for sure.
But
they made up and became better friends that way.
But one time there was a Sylvester, the metal shop was on the east side of Sylvester, which was that was the last building before he got to Kiwanis. And one time the shop teacher, this Mr. Mazowski.
Right.
We came to school one day and he came up and said, "Chris, there must have been one hell of a fight out back because everybody was going out there." I guess there was enough of a parade that he
got his attention.
Yeah, got his attention. But I remember being in a math class at Sylvester when President Kennedy was shot.
I was too. Maybe you were in my class. It was an algebra class, I believe.
Yeah. And I can't remember the teacher's name, but he had dark hair with a crew cut.
Yeah, no, I can't remember the teacher's name either, but I remember the class, and it was probably third period or something, and they announced that the president had been shot, and then all of a sudden the whole world stopped.
Didn't they take us into the gym? I recall they took us into the gym to talk to us about it for a while.
I suppose, sure. Yeah, it was a day that I still remember it.
Yeah. And there was one of the football coaches was it Cruz?
Cruz,
Mr. Cruz was the PE teacher anyhow.
Yes, he was. He was a good teacher. I liked Cruz because I liked PE.
Yeah. And then just going up to Highline was Highline.
Yeah.
And we had Mrs. McConaughey,
right,
was an English teacher. And can this be edited if it needed to be edited?
I'm not sure, but
maybe I better not say what I was going to say. But and then there was a young guy that was an English teacher with her. They had a shared classroom. Do you remember him?
Oh, I
He drove
don't.
a little Carmen Ghia, little Volkswagen Carmen Ghia,
Oh, I don't remember that.
but
Oh, I kind of do, but yeah.
he came to school for a few days one time with dark glasses on because I guess he'd gotten high on weed or something and stared at the sun.
Oh
in
no.
his eyes. So, but you had that, and then Lou Tice was
Right,
remember
Tice
Lou
was
was
our,
the
he was at our school at that
football
time
coach,
before he
wrestling
went
coach.
to Kennedy.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then went to Kennedy and was a big success over there.
Yeah, and then he started the Pacific Institute and became a real big success. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah. But
And,
yeah, that was good. I kind of enjoyed Sylvester. I mean, I liked Sylvester. I had a good
Yeah.
time there.
yeah. And it was but no, wasn't it brand new, basically? I mean, we got to go to a pretty brand new school.
Yeah, I think Sylvester was built around 53 or somewhere in there.
Yeah, so it was pretty brand new for us.
Yes, it was.
And then you go to Highline and it's a lot older.
Then it's pretty old, yeah.
But I remember when Lou was wrestling coach, I wrestled a little bit in high school. And the wrestling room was just a little tiny room down by the locker rooms and the basketball court there.
Okay.
Little tiny thing. And, Dave Saby was there and some of the other guys that wrestled. And we lost a match to Clover Park, I think it was. And he was really mad about that.
Sure.
So towards the end of practice, he said, okay, everybody, let's start running in place. And he had us run in place for 45 minutes.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
And there was so much sweat in there, it was running off the walls and puddling by the door. And the whole time he was taunting us. He was back in the Bear Bryant days rather than he became the positive mental attitude guy.
Bryce was the kind of guy that you ran you till you dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was his, he motivated you till you couldn't do anymore.
Yeah. But he'd come along and he'd say, okay, if one of you just puke, we could leave. If one of you would pass out, we could all leave. Would one of you just do that? So that was fun. And then I remember at Highline, Kathy Martin was the homecoming queen.
Right.
And I had the opportunity to at homecoming game. I was the one that drove her around the track.
Oh, you did that
because she was Kirsten's girlfriend.
Oh, I see.
I was really close to Mark, and Kathy would pick her up every day for school. But she was in the convertible, and so she was sitting basically, just by the trunk. She was sitting on top of the back seat, and I get all the way around, and there was a bit of a rise there. They had for some reason, there's like a piece of asphalt or something, and the front wheels went up, and I was going really slow, and I creaked, and then the front wheels fell off of it. It wasn't the full wheelbase. Well, I hit the brakes, and Kathy fell off her crown.
She hit her head.
She fell onto the back seat. No injury or anything.
Oh, good.
But I remember that, and there were
little things that you can remember pretty well.
Yeah.
And other things you completely, I don't remember that, but that's funny. But, we had a lot of fun times.
We did. Can't think of anything else from back at that time. Anything?
No, not really.
Kind of kick around.
I kind of gone over, a lot of different, but we covered the Five Corner area pretty good.
Yep.
Miller Creek, it was good times. I remember hanging out in the creek there a lot of times because they're always looking for either frogs or something. Also,
Yeah.
So. Yeah, well, gee, Chris, I'm glad we got to do this today. And
just one last thing I was thinking about when you mentioned Miller Creek and Lakeview. Mark and I had go-karts. We would zing around, down at the gas station, anything with an engine, go-kart, motorcycle, boat, car, we ended up with. And because no police ever went in there because Beering wasn't incorporated and King County Police never, we would drive go-karts and motorcycles in that little loop we lived on. And then one time we took them over to Lakeview and we're running them around that little park or grassy spot down in front and up the hills. And then this guy shows up with what was probably the first ATV. It was this go-kart that was probably 6 inches off the ground with a big Tecumseh, Wisconsin engine on the back of it
Oh,
that, made it almost like a Jeep.
oh,
And we'd buzz around over there with that. So that was last thought there.
that was
But
fun.
We're about to the end of our 45.
Yeah, I
minutes,
think
so.
we're getting close, but yeah. Well, geez, Chris, I want to thank you, and we'll get this going one of these days. We'll put it on, and
Okay.
you'll be able to listen to it. Well, thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.